this interview, we'll explore how pharma marketers can better connect healthcare providers and patients through integrated strategy, precision media, and advanced analytics. Ryan Patterson, Vice President of Strategic Solutions at Underscore Marketing, will discuss how AI is reshaping the media landscape, enabling smarter targeting, faster optimization, and deeper insights, all while keeping human judgment at the core. He'll also explain how Underscore Marketing pilots innovations, unifies data, and ensures connectivity across touchpoints to drive meaningful outcomes in rare disease and beyond. I'm Lesha Bushak, Pharma Editor at MM+M, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Underscore Marketing. This is Bridging the Gap, how AI, media, and strategy connect HCPs and patients. Ryan, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Ryan, what are some ways that pharma can better align HCP and patient strategies, especially in rare disease where journeys are so intertwined?
Yeah, so a lot of the things that we want to be focused on is making sure that we're helping the patients and the HCPs to speak a common language. So when we're thinking about the messaging that we're providing to a patient and a physician, we want the patients to be able to articulate to the HCPs what they're experiencing in a way that allows the HCPs to properly diagnose or treat them for what they're currently experiencing. And we want HCPs to be able to speak at a level where patients can understand and relate to their actual experience to help further that conversation to get the right treatments. A lot of the things that help to connect that journey and that experience between the HCP and the patient providers is the ways that we can target and reach them in the moments that matter. A lot of really rare diseases have more providers than they have patients, and so providers are maybe seeing one patient in any given year. And so making sure that we're reaching them with that right type of patient information when they're actually seeing that patient's really critical. And we'll leverage real-time data like claims data, diagnostic codes, lab test codes, and results to make sure that we're actually messaging people when they're likely to have a patient, using predictive analytics to say, okay, if someone currently looks like this as their patient population, what is the likelihood for them to progress in their disease state so that we can give a physician the right information to arm them with treatment information. And then beyond that, making sure that we also generally understand their need. A lot of times HCPs, number one need is give me something that I can give to my patients to help educate them. And hammering them with your brand message is not necessarily what's going to resonate, but giving them a tool that they can actually leverage to help their patient along with their journey is going to be meaningful. And it's the same on the inverse as patients saying, like, give me something to hold on to so that I know how to take control of my disease state. And so those are a lot of the things that we would want to be doing to marry these moments between patients and providers, because ultimately that holy grail is going to be at the point of care when they're talking together about treatments, and reaching people in that specific moment is particularly challenging. There are some ways to do it, but in order to help guide a conversation around a treatment journey, it requires us to be proactive in reaching them in the moments prior to that so that they're prepared for the conversation in that specific moment. So we always want to try and meet that holy grail moment where we can, but ultimately it's making sure that people feel armed with the information necessary to speak productively in those moments.
So it's not just about that critical moment in the doctor's office, it's also, as you said, those moments leading up to it, those moments that matter. What are some of the examples of such important moments, leading up to that holy grail, doctor's office conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the physician standpoint, it might be when they see a particular lab result that indicates this might be something different or something really rare that they don't have a lot of experience with, and providing them with the education and the tools to further how they want to approach that treatment. I think a lot of people are under the impression that doctors kind of know everything at all times, and that's not the case, right? They're human and they're learning too. And one of the responsibilities that we have in our industry is to try and give them helpful educational materials to make sure that they're making informed decisions to treat their patients effectively. So those moments that matter for the HCP is sometimes about reminding them of what they may have already learned, but giving them some additional context to make those right decisions. And for patients, it could be something as simple as knowing where they go to research information and being present in those moments to give them resources. When you're diagnosed with something, it can be a very scary thing. A lot of people will go to the internet to try and learn more, and knowing where a particular type of patient population may go to seek that information is a really helpful way that we can provide resources. There are a lot of advocacy groups, for example, that exist for niche conditions. So partnering with those advocacy groups to give them additional resources to give to people that they're connected with is another way that we can help in those moments that matter.
So as you mentioned, having that cohesive messaging and that alignment is really important. How do you go about ensuring that your brand media and creative strategies are all aligned and have that cohesive impact?
It starts with understanding that the brand needs are bigger than media in and of itself, and so you need to partner with all of these different stakeholders to align on what are the actual dynamics in the marketplace, what are the dynamics for patients, for providers, competitors, and so on, and outlining all of these things to say, okay, how do we each operate within these functional areas given these additional dynamics? So when we're thinking about creating that cohesive connectivity, it typically starts with having all of the right stakeholders in the room together and actually meeting to discuss their individual areas of expertise. Messaging is going to inform the way that we leverage media. The way that we leverage media very often informs the type of messaging that we use. Legal counsel informs what you can actually do. So having everybody in the room at the start really helps to make sure that you come at everything with all of the right considerations in mind. In our kind of day-to-day examples, the places where we've had clients that are proactive in having everybody as a part of that initial conversation is where we've been most successful. There's the least roadblocks, everyone is marching to the same beat, and all of those potential roadblocks and considerations are thought of in the ideation stage, so there's not any hiccups or unknowns ruining potential momentum as you go along.
So making sure it's not siloed and that everyone is at the table from the very beginning on the same page.
Yeah, I think a lot of times some of the maybe more on the outskirts functional organizations like legal or regulatory, they get brought in when a creative has been developed, and then they mark it up.
Right.
And having them at the table in discussions about what are we as a brand trying to communicate and accomplish can help really inform the path forward, because they traditionally might not have as much insight into what is feasible with media, for example, or what type of creative concepts we might be envisioning. But then when they get to sit there and listen to it, they can jump in with really wonderful nuggets about how we can make that better, because it's not natural necessarily for a media agency or creative agency to have that degree of legal knowledge either. And so just having everyone at that table does make it a lot easier.
So one of the things that we have all been hearing about in the industry, of course, is AI. So I wanted to ask you about AI and how that's impacting media execution. In particular, how are you seeing it impact optimization, personalization, and targeting?
So this is a big question. I think fundamentally the first thing that's probably important to do is to ground AI. What is it? How is it being used? Ultimately, at the moment, it's being used as a plethora of different things, from generative AI to statistical analysis, and kind of everything is under this bucket of AI. And so maybe we need to be a little bit more specific when we're saying AI about what an AI tool is being used to do. Ultimately, the way that AI is helping to support is it's not magic. It doesn't do things that humans are not able to do otherwise, but it certainly enhances a lot of the things that we historically would have done, and in some ways makes certain types of analyses more possible because data sets otherwise may be too large for a human to evaluate, but the methodology is not net new. So when we're using AI in media, if we're talking like personalization first, ultimately what we're doing is using AI to help evaluate large data sets to refine who are the people that we're speaking to, how can we reach these people, what's going to resonate with them. So using like an LLM to evaluate many conversations to understand tone, how people feel about a specific disease state or product or challenge that they're having, and then leveraging that to personalize messages to that group of people. That's like one example of usage of AI. If we're thinking about something like targeting, very similarly, looking at a large audience with all the data that we might have about an audience to refine an approach. So if we're thinking about HCP targeting, if we have historical prescribing behavior, we have geographic information, we have demographic information, and we're able to sub-segment an audience to more effectively reach someone based on their known needs. So at Underscore, for example, we kind of capture AI usage under our offering of Pinnacle, which is really like our analytics solution. And so it's leveraged within that suite of solutions to help advance the work that we do. So more than anything else, it's an enhancer and allows people to focus on doing more things that AI maybe otherwise wouldn't be able to do. AI ultimately is an accelerator, but not a replacement for humans actually intervening and acting on things. It works with the data that you provided and the information that you provided. So curating what AI is actually utilizing to inform the outputs that it's providing is really important. It's kind of this always old adage of bad data in, bad data out. AI is no different. It is not able to distinguish what might be true or correct. And so that interpretation is a really critical aspect of it, excuse me. For optimization purposes, that is one of the places where AI is really, really effective at evaluating data in statistically significant ways and being able to query it to say, hey, what was the performance of this media plan over the past month, right? How was I able to reach this target list of physicians? What are the differences in engagement between segment A, B, C, and D of this audience in May 2025? Those are the types of things that AI is particularly useful at because it can translate that natural language into the data that might sit behind and feed. So that's one of probably the core benefits of AI, is that speed to understanding and allowing us to then optimize and execute more effectively as a result of that.
And I imagine that's like especially effective in rare disease as well, right? Because I mean, rare disease has historically maybe been difficult to measure or gather data on patients or HCPs. So do you see like the AI implementation there as being very useful?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely useful. I don't know if I would necessarily say it's more useful in rare disease, but it's certainly very useful in all cases. The one thing that might be more useful, that it may be more useful in rare disease, is that the data sets are smaller. So pattern recognition is a really critical component of AI, and having the ability to gain pattern recognition and statistical significance with a smaller data set by comparing it to other larger data sets is one of the ways that it may be more informative and beneficial in a rare disease state.
And when it comes to advanced analytics like your tool Pinnacle, how do you use that to measure metrics and impact?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that we leverage our analytics suite to help solve a critical business challenge for our clients. For example, something that came up even earlier today on a panel that I was speaking on is, how do we know whether our mix of channels or our mix of messaging is more effective, or which of these combinations are actually moving the needle in an HCP's prescribing behavior or understanding or diagnostic behavior? And So some of the things that we've been doing is spending a lot of time setting up really rigorous connected data for all of the media that we're executing so that we can evaluate effectively through this Pinnacle Analytics suite, are there differences, like statistical differences in the way that people are behaving based on what they interact with? And that goes beyond just media, but also field force interaction, engagement, patient volume coming into their offices. So we're ingesting everything that we can to make sure that we're making these connections and allowing AI to make these statistical evaluations and pattern recognition of what's actually working so that we can optimize effectively based on that. In addition to that, we're using it very similarly in targeting, right? Who's actually media savvy. There are a lot of physicians that they couldn't care less, how often they're reached through email or any other channel is just not going to be meaningful for them. They prefer to engage with, a face-to-face interaction, or they want to do their own research on specific websites. And tracking that data over time with these physicians allows us to segment them more effectively to say, okay, who are the right people to be speaking to? Because we don't want to inundate physicians that are not interested in your messaging with messaging. It's going to turn them off of the treatment choice, of the product. It's annoying to get ads constantly when you're just not interested in receiving them, where some people maybe really may find that really helpful, right? Because they're extremely busy all the time. And we as marketers do our best to meet them in the moments between and moments that are meaningful to them, where they're going to take that information and say, okay, this was helpful to me. Which is sometimes in their blue jean moments. We want as much as possible to reach them in those moments where they're actually working. And so, tools that we use through Pinnacle allow us to help inform better targeting, both from the actual person themselves and when and where we're reaching them so that they're most likely to engage in the content.
What innovations and pilots are you most excited to test, and how do you decide which ones to test and which ones are best?
So the ones that we're most excited about right now is our really wonderful programmatic teams have figured out a way to make a connection between modeled audiences that are used in the programmatic space to reach appropriate patients and bring that over to social, which is a very new thing. Historically, social targeting is really dictated by the social partners themselves, and so this allows us to provide greater consistency across the ecosystem with which we're reaching patients. So that's something that we're particularly excited about right now, that we're piloting with a number of different partners. One of the ways that we evaluate new partnerships in general is being we're very careful about making sure that we are evaluating risk with intention. It's okay to do something new and potentially have it not work, as long as you're aware of that being a possibility. Right? Not everything is always going to work all the time, but being really thoughtful about how we're investing, what the likelihood of something potentially working is, and what the risks associated with those things are, is how we make those decisions. So it's always going to be in partnership with a brand or client team, so that they're also comfortable with that potential associated risk and that they have all of the knowledge going into it. But there's also a lot to be gained by new innovative partnerships in this space where we're reaching and educating people in ways that they otherwise would not have been. Those novel experiences are typically more impactful than something that's tried and true and kind of always surrounding in the market. A lot of then our approach, I think, is around that risk evaluation and what's the potential gain from that, and making sure that people feel really aligned.
And looking ahead to the future, I'm curious if there are any emerging trends in the healthcare and pharma marketing space. It could be an aspect of AI, or it could be not related to AI at all, that you're particularly excited about and looking forward to see come to fruition.
Something that's really interesting in the pharma space right now is, from a product development standpoint, more and more products are getting developed in rare disease, very niche products that treat a much smaller population than some of the much larger brands do. And as a result of that, they tend to be more efficacious or curative. But then from a marketing perspective, that requires us to be more thoughtful and nimble about reaching the right people that's going to actually benefit from these products. So I think it's a really interesting challenge to help support pharma organizations in these newer endeavors of trying to be, what's the next best thing that we can do to help people in their treatment journeys. From a marketing perspective, the thing that's most interesting is just the continued advancement of data and the way that we're leveraging data. It's always kind of been a part of the conversation, right? We always want to make sure we're making smart decisions, but there's more data than ever. And with things like AI helping us inform how we evaluate data, it's advancing at a really, really rapid rate, which is really cool to be a part of. And it's very interested to see where that's going to continue to go so that we can be on the forefront of what helps people the most.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to our audience for tuning in. I'm Lesha Bushak, Pharma Editor at MM+M, and we'll see you next time.